Hello, everyone. I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax.
I pulled into the stop-and-go parking lot 15 minutes early for my shift, watching as a blue sedan parked crookedly across two spaces. The new guy. Management had told me yesterday I'd be training someone tonight. The car door opened, and out stepped a young man with messy hair and a wrinkled uniform shirt, one hand holding his phone and the other carrying a large energy drink. As a single mother of two kids, I couldn't afford to lose this job. The stop-and-go paid nearly double what other convenience stores in Riverdale offered, which meant I could actually put food on the table and save a little each month. There was a reason for the exceptional pay, of course, but that wasn't something you explained in a job posting. The new employee walked toward me with an easy smile, sticking out his hand as I got out of my car. "Mark Carter," he said. "You must be Samantha?" I nodded, shaking his hand briefly before walking to the store entrance. "Just call me Sam. Let's get inside and I'll show you around." The lights buzzed overhead as I unlocked the front door. The night manager wouldn't arrive until much later, which gave me plenty of time to cover the basics with Mark. And by basics, I meant the rules. The very important rules that kept us alive. "So," Mark said, following me inside, "Thomas said you've been here a while." 3 years, I answered, walking behind the counter and putting my purse in the locked drawer where employees kept their belongings. Which means I've outlasted about 12 other employees who didn't take this job seriously. Mark laughed, clearly thinking I was joking. I wasn't. "All right, before we get to register training, there are some store-specific rules you need to know," I said, watching his face. "Rule number 1, never work alone, no matter what. Even if someone calls in sick, you call me or another employee before starting your shift solo." Mark nodded while fixing his name tag. "Sure, makes sense. Safety in numbers and all that." "This isn't about robbery prevention," I said firmly. 2 years ago, a guy named Jason decided to cover an overnight shift by himself when his partner called in sick. The security cameras showed him working normally until 2:17 a.m., when he looked up at something off camera and then walked into the storage room. He never came out. Mark's smile got smaller. "What, like he stole something and ran out the back?" I shook my head. The back door was locked from the inside. All his belongings were still here. His car was still in the parking lot. He just vanished. "That's..." Mark started, then shrugged. "Weird coincidence, I guess." I could already tell this was going to be difficult. Some people just wouldn't believe until they saw for themselves, and even then they'd try to explain it away. I'd seen it before with other new hires. "Let me show you the store layout," I said, changing tactics. I'd come back to the rules throughout the shift as relevant situations came up. I walked Mark through the aisles, showing him where everything was stocked, how to check expiration dates, and the proper rotation procedures. He seemed smart enough, asking good questions about inventory and picking things up quickly. When we reached the refrigerated section, I handed him a box of energy drinks to restock. "So, why's the pay so good here?" Mark asked as he arranged cans in the cooler. "Most places like this pay minimum wage." "The unusual hours," I lied. It wasn't entirely untrue. "And the special circumstances." "Special circumstances," he repeated. Before I could answer, a loud scratching noise came from the direction of the bathroom. It sounded like fingernails dragging slowly across the inside of the door. Mark turned toward the sound. "What's that?" he asked, already stepping away from the cooler. I grabbed his arm firmly. "Rule 5. Never investigate bathroom noises between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. Mark pulled away from my grasp. "Someone might need help," he said, moving toward the bathroom. I stepped in front of him, blocking his path with my body. No, trust me on this. We don't check bathroom noises. Not ever. Come on, that's ridiculous, Mark said, trying to step around me. What if a customer fell or something? The bathroom is empty. I checked it before we closed the cooler section, which is standard procedure. There is no one in there. I stood my ground, arms crossed. The scratching stopped suddenly, replaced by a soft crying sound that might have been a child. Mark's eyes got wide. Do you hear that? That sounds like a kid. He tried to push past me. I planted my feet firmly and put both hands on his chest to stop him. It's not a kid. It's never a kid. That's how it tricks you. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in Mark's face. The crying continued for another 30 seconds, then stopped as suddenly as it had begun. We stood in silence for a moment. What was that? Mark finally asked. That, I said, is why we get paid so well. As we continued the training, I explained more of the rules. Rule 2. No alcohol sales after 2 a.m., even if the customer threatens you or offers extra money. Rule 3. If the lights blink 3 times in a row, go to the back room immediately and wait exactly 7 minutes before coming out. Mark listened with growing doubt. These sound like urban legends or horror movie rules. Rule 4, I continued, ignoring his comment, is crucial. When regular customers come in acting strange, walking oddly, speaking in a flat voice, or just seeming off, they're not themselves anymore. Don't talk to them, don't look them in the eye, and definitely don't let them touch you. Not themselves. Mark laughed. What does that even mean? It means exactly what I said, I replied flatly. You'll understand when you see it. As the evening went on, I showed Mark how to clean the coffee station, run inventory reports, and handle the register. Throughout it all, I continued explaining the various rules and procedures unique to our store. Each time, his responses got more dismissive. So let me get this straight, he said as I explained the 11 p.m. protocol. Every night at exactly 11 p.m., we have to lock the front doors even if customers are still shopping? Yes, I confirmed. At 10:58, we warn any remaining customers that we need to lock up temporarily. Any stragglers are walked out through the employee exit at the back. And this is official store policy, locking customers in or kicking them out at 11. He raised an eyebrow. It's not locking them in, it's locking other things out, I said. And yes, it's official policy. Thomas will tell you the same thing. Mark shook his head. This is just horror movie nonsense. Next you'll tell me there's a full moon rule, or something about not getting wet after midnight. I sighed. Emma was more willing to listen to important instructions than this grown man. Even Jacob knew when to take things seriously. Look, I said, I have 2 kids at home who need me. Emma and Jacob don't have anyone else. I follow these rules because I want to go home to them every morning. Whether you believe in the reasons or not, follow the procedures. That's all I'm asking. Mark's face softened slightly at the mention of my children, but the doubt remained in his eyes. At 9:45 p.m., the bell above the door rang as a customer entered. I immediately recognized the tall figure in the black hoodie. Mark got tense beside me, his hand slowly reaching for the phone. It's okay, I said quietly, moving to the coffee machine. I poured a large black coffee and placed it on the counter, not making any move to ring it up. The tall man nodded almost invisibly and took the coffee. I could feel Mark staring as the man walked to the far corner of the store and seemed to blend into the shadows. What was that? Mark whispered. Why didn't you charge him? That's William, I explained. He helps with problems. The free coffee is a courtesy. Helps with what problems? Mark pressed. The kind that make the rules necessary, I answered simply. For the rest of our shift, Mark continued learning the register system and stocking procedures. William stayed in his corner, occasionally moving to different areas of the store, but never speaking. Just before our shift ended, the tall man placed his empty cup on the counter and left without a word. That guy gives me the creeps. Mark said once William was gone. "And all these rules. I've worked night shifts before, and sure, weird customers come in, but there's nothing supernatural about it." I finished counting my register and looked at Mark directly. "I'm not asking you to believe in the supernatural. I'm asking you to follow the procedures that have kept employees at this store alive." Mark laughed again, shaking his head. "Right. Mysterious disappearances and things that are not themselves. Listen, I appreciate you trying to make the night interesting, but I'm a bit old for ghost stories." As we left the store and headed to our cars, I felt a knot of worry in my stomach. I'd seen this attitude before, and it never ended well. People who dismissed the rules tended not to last long at the stop-and-go. "Just be careful, okay?" I said as we reached the parking lot. "And remember, never work alone." "Sure thing, boss," Mark replied with a mock salute. "I'll make sure to check for monsters under the cash register, too." I watched him drive away, the knot in my stomach getting tighter. I needed to pick up Emma and Jacob from my neighbor's house, get them to bed, and somehow get some sleep myself before doing this all again tomorrow night. As I started my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark's training had been inadequate. Not because I hadn't tried, but because he simply wouldn't listen. Some people had to learn the hard way. I just hoped Mark would survive the lesson. 3 days had passed since Mark's first shift, and I was already exhausted from his constant dismissal of everything I tried to teach him. Tonight was no different as I watched him carelessly tossing energy drinks onto the shelf instead of arranging them properly. "You're going to break one of those if you keep throwing them," I said, moving to fix his sloppy work. Mark shrugged. "They're cans. They'll be fine." I bit back a sharper response. My kid's babysitter had called in sick today, forcing me to drop Emma and Jacob at my mother's house across town. The extra driving had left me with barely 4 hours of sleep, and my patience was wearing thin. "Let's go over Rule 2 again," I said, moving toward the liquor section. "No alcohol sales after 2 a.m., even if they offer me $1 million or threaten to kill me," Mark interrupted, mimicking my serious tone before switching back to his casual one. "Yeah, I got it the first 3 times. I stopped walking and turned to face him directly. "This isn't a joke, Mark. 2 months ago, a guy offered one of our cashiers $500 for a bottle of whiskey at 2:30 a.m. She took the money. No, she sold him the bottle. He left, and 10 minutes later he walked back in. Except it wasn't him anymore." I kept my voice steady. Whatever came back wearing his face broke both her arms before William intervened. Mark rolled his eyes. "More superstitious garbage. There's probably some logical explanation, like the guy was on drugs or something." "The security footage showed him walking through the closed door, Mark. Not opening it, walking through it." "Security footage gets glitchy all the time," he said dismissively. "I'm not buying into this horror movie stuff just because this place has some weird vibes." The front door chimed, and I looked up to see Karen Mitchell entering the store. She came in every day at the same time to buy her lottery tickets. Except something was wrong tonight. Very wrong. Karen's body moved in jerky, uneven steps, but the truly disturbing part was her neck, bent at an angle that no human spine could possibly achieve without breaking. Her head tilted almost completely sideways, nearly touching her shoulder, yet she continued walking forward. I grabbed Mark's arm hard enough to make him wince. "What the—" he started to say. "Remember Rule 4, I whispered urgently. "When regulars act strange, they're not themselves anymore." Mark stared at Karen, his usual smirk faltering as the elderly woman moved deeper into the store. Her head remained at that impossible angle, but now her eyes, previously fixed straight ahead, swiveled in their sockets to look directly at us, without her face turning. "That's just Karen," Mark whispered back, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Maybe she has a medical condition or something." "That's not Karen anymore," I said firmly, pulling him toward the back room. "We need to go. Now." For once, Mark didn't argue. We retreated to the employee area, and I closed the door behind us, leaving it open just a crack so I could monitor the situation. "What are we doing?" Mark asked, his voice lower than usual. "We can't just hide back here." "We wait until she leaves," I explained. "Whatever's wearing Karen right now will get bored and go away if we don't engage." Through the crack in the door, I watched as not Karen moved through the aisles with that weird, jerky walk. She picked up items, looked at them while tilting her head, and put them back in the wrong places. It felt like forever, but was probably only 5 minutes before she walked to the door and left without buying anything. I waited another full minute before opening the door. "All clear," I said, stepping back into the store. Mark followed, looking around cautiously. That was weird, but she could have some kind of neck problem. My aunt had this thing where, "Mark," I cut him off. "Normal people with neck problems can't turn their heads 90 degrees to the side while keeping their bodies facing forward." What we just saw wasn't human anymore. He didn't have a quick comeback this time, and I counted that as progress. The rest of our shift continued without incident until 10:55 p.m., when Joseph Rodriguez walked in. Joseph was a regular who often stopped by after his late shift at the factory across town. "Evening, Sam," he greeted me with a tired smile. "Hi, Joseph. Just so you know, we'll be locking the doors in a few minutes," I warned him. He nodded absently, already heading toward the snack aisle. Mark looked at me with confusion. "Why are we locking the doors? We're open 24/7. "Rule 6, I reminded him. "At exactly 11 p.m., we lock the front doors, no exceptions." I moved to the entrance, keys in hand, watching the clock on my phone. Joseph was still browsing the chip selection, seemingly unconcerned about the time. "This is ridiculous," Mark said. "We can't just lock a customer inside." "We have exactly 2 minutes," I replied, not taking my eyes off the time. "At 10:58, we warn any remaining customers. At 11:00 sharp, those doors get locked whether people are inside or not." I walked over to Joseph. "Sir, I need to lock the front doors in 2 minutes. If you're not finished shopping by then, I'll have to let you out through our employee exit in the back." Joseph nodded, grabbing a bag of chips and a soda. "No problem. I'll be quick." At 10:59, Joseph was still at the register with Mark ringing him up. I stood by the doors, keys ready. "Mark, hurry it up," I called over my shoulder. "He's paying, Sam. Give us a second," Mark replied with annoyance. The clock on my phone changed to 11 p.m., and I immediately locked both deadbolts on the front doors. Through the glass, I could see the parking lot was empty except for our cars, but the darkness beyond the lot's edge seemed deeper than usual. "Come on," I said to Joseph once he had his items. "I'll show you out the back way." Mark watched with obvious disapproval as I led Joseph through the employee area to our special exit, a door with additional locks and symbols etched into the frame that most people never noticed. "Thank you," Joseph said as he stepped outside. I quickly closed and locked the door behind him. When I returned to the front, Mark was staring at me with his arms crossed. "You know how insane that looked, right? Locking the doors at exactly 11 and making the poor guy leave through the back like we're running some kind of secret operation." "We are running a secret operation," I said simply, "and the doors stay locked until 5 a.m. Mark shook his head. "What happens at 11 p.m. that's so dangerous? In 3 days, I haven't seen anything except an old lady with a stiff neck." "You don't want to see what happens when the doors aren't locked at 11, I said. "Trust me on that." The rest of the night was quiet. Mark cleaned the coffee station while I restocked the cigarettes behind the counter. Around 1 a.m., Mark moved to the supply closet with cleaning supplies. I was checking inventory on my tablet when I heard Mark's voice from across the store. "Hey, Sam, do you hear that?" I looked up to see him standing near the supply closet, his head tilted toward the door. I walked over quickly, already knowing what he was hearing before I got there. Faint crying, like a child in distress, was coming from inside the closet. "It sounds like a kid," Mark said, reaching for the door handle. "Maybe they got locked in somehow." I moved to stop him, but before I could reach him, a tall figure appeared directly behind Mark. William had materialized silently, seemingly from nowhere. "Don't," William said quietly. Mark jumped back with a startled yelp, nearly colliding with me. His eyes were wide as he stared at William, who stood perfectly still between Mark and the closet door. "Jesus Christ!" Mark gasped. "Where did you come from?" William didn't answer. He never did. Instead, he placed one hand against the closet door, and the crying sound immediately stopped. "Mark, this is William," I said, watching as the color slowly returned to Mark's face. "I told you about him on your first night. He protects us." "Protects us from what?" Mark asked, his voice uncharacteristically small. William turned his hooded head slightly toward Mark. His face was hidden. "From what exists beyond the rules," he said in a deep, quiet voice. It was the most I'd ever heard William speak at once. He took his hand off the door and walked away to his usual corner. Mark watched him go, then looked at me. For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't look smug at all. "What the hell is going on in this place, Sam?" he asked. "I've been trying to tell you," I said. "The rules aren't superstition, they're survival." Mark looked back at the supply closet, which was now completely silent. And if I had opened that door, I didn't answer immediately, remembering the night shift worker 2 years ago who had done exactly that. We never found enough of him to hold a funeral. "Let's just say you wouldn't be finishing your shift," I finally replied, "and I'd be training someone new tomorrow." Mark was quieter for the rest of the night. He still didn't fully believe. I could tell he was still doubtful as time went on. But at least now he was thinking about it. Sometimes just getting someone to question their disbelief is all you need. As our shift ended and the morning crew arrived, I grabbed my stuff and headed for the door with Mark walking behind me. "Sam," he said as we reached our cars, "that thing with William tonight, I can't explain that." "You don't need to explain it," I replied. "You just need to respect it." But the crying in the closet was not a child, I finished for him. "It's never a child." Mark nodded slowly. "I'll see you tomorrow night then." I watched him drive away, hoping that tonight's events had finally gotten through to him. The rules kept us alive, but only if we followed them. And I had the feeling Mark was still deciding whether to believe. A week had passed since the thing with William in the supply closet. I'd hoped that experience might have knocked some sense into Mark, but if anything, his attitude about the store rules had only gotten worse. He'd briefly seemed worried, but now was even more stubborn than before, which worried me more than when he just didn't know. Tuesday night we were working together again at the stop and go. I was putting new candy on the shelves while Mark worked the register, looking at both his phone and a sports magazine he'd brought from home. The clock on the wall showed 10:55 p.m. "Mark," I called out. "It's almost 11. Time to lock up." He barely glanced up from his phone. "Yeah, in a minute." I left the candy boxes and walked to the front. "Not in a minute. Now. We need to warn any customers and get the doors locked by 11 sharp." "Relax, Sam. There's nobody even in the store right now." He flipped a page in his magazine. "That's not the point. The doors get locked at 11 whether customers are here or not." I moved toward the entrance, keys already in hand. The time passed slowly as I looked outside. The parking lot was empty except for our cars, but that didn't matter. Rules were rules, especially this one. "Mark, put that down and help me check the store," I said, my voice tightening with urgency. He sighed dramatically but set his phone aside. "Fine, I'll check the back aisles." At 10:59, I stood by the front doors, watching the seconds count down on my phone. Mark was supposed to be making a final sweep, but I couldn't see him anywhere in the store. The time changed to 11 p.m. I reached for the locks, then hesitated. "Mark," I called out, "are you done checking?" No answer. I should have locked the doors immediately, but I needed to know if Mark had found someone. "Mark!" I called again, louder this time. Finally, his voice came from the back. "Yeah, all clear." I turned back to the doors, but as I did, I noticed the time on my phone. 11:01 p.m. I got really nervous. I quickly locked both deadbolts. 11:02 p.m. Mark strolled back to the front, completely unconcerned. Nobody back there told you we were empty. The doors are supposed to be locked at 11, I said, my voice tight. It's now 11:03. So, we're a few minutes late. Big deal. He shrugged and returned to the counter. I followed him, feeling angry and scared. It is a big deal. 3 minutes late, Mark? Do you have any idea what can happen in 3 minutes? Let me guess. Demons will crawl through the doors and eat our souls? He rolled his eyes. Last year, I said, lowering my voice, a girl named Rebecca was 15 minutes late locking up. They found her with her skin turned inside out. Mark's smile hesitated for a second before he forced a laugh. Come on, Sam. Skin turned inside out? That's not even physically possible. I saw the photos, Mark. Thomas showed them to all of us as a warning. I wasn't lying. The images of Rebecca's body had haunted my nightmares for weeks afterward. Whatever came through those doors didn't just kill her, it unmade her. Something in my tone must have gotten through to him because he didn't immediately dismiss me. Instead, he looked toward the front doors, now securely locked, and swallowed hard. You're serious, he said, not quite a question. Dead serious. 3 minutes late is 3 minutes too many. Mark didn't say anything else about it that night, but I noticed him looking at the doors more often, especially when the wind picked up outside and branches scratched against the glass. Thursday night's shift started normally enough. We had a steady stream of customers until about midnight. Then the usual late-night lull set in. Mark had been quieter than usual, actually following procedures without much complaint. I hoped our conversation about Rebecca had finally made an impression. At 1:30 a.m., without any warning, the lights went out. Not just the store lights, everything. The street lights outside, the neon open sign, even the emergency lights failed to kick in. The store went completely dark. Power outage? Mark's voice came from somewhere near the register. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, turning on the flashlight. This isn't normal, I said quietly. The emergency generator should have kicked in automatically. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could make out Mark's silhouette moving toward the front windows. Looks like the whole block is out, he said, looking outside. Get away from the windows, I warned, moving toward him. Why? I'm just checking if... A loud bang interrupted him as something hit the glass doors from outside. Then another bang, and another. Multiple impacts, like someone, or something, was throwing themselves against the entrance. Mark, get back! I grabbed his arm and pulled him away from the windows just as my flashlight beam caught glimpses of figures pressing against the glass. Their features were distorted, faces stretched and twisted in ways that human faces couldn't bend. What the hell? Mark gasped, trying to look directly at them. I yanked him further back, putting myself between him and the doors. Never look directly at them, I hissed. Keep your eyes down or closed. The banging grew more insistent, the glass doors rattling in their frames. My flashlight beam shook as my hand trembled. From the corner of my eye, I could see multiple figures now, their bodies pressed against the glass, hands flat against the surface. What are they? Mark whispered, his voice stripped of all its usual cockiness. I don't know, I admitted. And I don't want to find out. I noticed someone moving at the back of the store. A tall figure came out of the shadows, walking calmly toward the front. William. I hadn't seen him come in earlier, but somehow he was here when we needed him most. William walked past us without saying anything, heading to the doors. As he got to the entrance, the figures outside ran away right away, vanishing into the dark beyond the parking lot. The banging stopped. Seconds later, the power came back on. The lights blinked on, the refrigerator unit started buzzing again, and the electronic register rebooted with a series of beeps. It was as if nothing had happened. William stood at the doors for another moment before turning and walking to his usual corner. He didn't speak or look at us, but his message was clear. He had protected us. Mark leaned against the counter, looking pale. "What just happened?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's why we locked the doors at 11, I said simply. For the rest of our shift, Mark was subdued. He jumped at small noises and kept glancing at William's corner, as if making sure he was still there. When morning came and our replacements arrived, Mark practically ran to his car. I caught up with him in the parking lot. "You okay?" He took a deep breath. I don't know what that was. "It was what I've been trying to warn you about," I said. "The rules exist for a reason, Mark." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that now, but..." He hesitated, looking back at the store. "Those things at the window, they couldn't have been real, right? Maybe it was just some teenagers messing around, and the power outage. That happens sometimes." I looked at him in disbelief. Even after everything he'd seen, he was still trying to rationalize it away. "Mark, those weren't teenagers, and William didn't just happen to show up at the exact moment we needed help. Look, I'm not saying nothing weird happened," he said defensively. "It was definitely unsettling, but there are rational explanations for power outages and people banging on doors." I gave up. Some people would never believe, no matter what they saw with their own eyes. "Just promise me you'll keep following the rules, even if you don't believe in the reasons." "Sure," he said, but I could tell he was just humoring me. Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text while I was helping Emma with her science project. It was from Mark. "Can I cover your Monday night shift? Need extra hours this week." I frowned and typed back, "You mean with Ashley?" Ashley was our newest hire, still in training but catching on quickly. "No, just me. Ashley called in sick." My stomach dropped. I immediately called Mark instead of texting, but he didn't pick up. I tried again. Still nothing. I sent another text. "Never work alone. Wait for me to find someone to work with you." 3 dots appeared as he typed a response. "No one follows these rules when you're not here anyway. Nothing ever happens." I called again. No answer. I texted Thomas, explaining the situation. He responded that he would handle it, but I couldn't stop feeling worried. "Mark, do not work alone. I'm serious. It's dangerous." The 3 dots appeared again, then disappeared, then reappeared. "Relax, Sam. I'll be fine. See you Tuesday." I stared at my phone, a sense of dread washing over me. Emma looked up from her solar system model, noticing my expression. "Mom, is everything okay?" I forced a smile for my daughter's sake. "Yeah, honey, just work stuff." But it wasn't okay. Mark was going to break the most important rule of all, and there was nothing I could do to stop him. I pushed open the door to the stop and go at 5:55 a.m. Tuesday morning, 5 minutes before my shift was supposed to start. The fluorescent lights overhead were blinking on and off unevenly. Something was wrong. The doors shouldn't have been unlocked yet. Mark should have been waiting to hand over the register. "Mark?" I called out, my voice sounding too loud in the empty store. No answer. The silence felt heavy, pressing against my ears as I took a few careful steps inside. The store looked normal at first glance. Shelves stocked, coffee machine buzzing, register closed but intact. But Mark wasn't behind the counter where he should have been. "Mark, are you here?" I tried again, moving further into the store. That's when I noticed the drops on the floor. Dark liquid, almost black under the blinking lights, creating a trail from the counter toward the bathroom. My stomach tightened as I followed the trail with my eyes, not my feet. The bathroom door was closed. I pulled out my phone and dialed Thomas Jones immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. "Thomas, it's Sam. Something's wrong at the store. Mark's not here. The doors were unlocked, and there's something on the floor. I'm following protocol and leaving now." My hand shook as I ended the call. Protocol was clear. If anything seemed wrong when arriving for a shift, we were to leave immediately and contact management. No exceptions. I backed toward the entrance, keeping my eyes on the bathroom door. The trail of dark droplets shined under the stuttering lights. I didn't want to think about what it might be, but my mind filled in the blanks anyway. As I reached the door, the lights blinked more violently, then stabilized. When the light steadied, I saw that the dark drops weren't black at all. They were deep, unmistakable red. I turned and ran to my car, fumbling with my keys before managing to unlock it. Once inside, I locked the doors and started the engine with trembling hands. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The store lights kept turning on and off, and for a split second, I thought I saw a tall person standing in the doorway. But when I looked directly, there was nothing there. The drive home took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Mark had broken the cardinal rule: never work alone. Whatever happened to him was the consequence of that choice. Emma and Jacob were eating breakfast when I walked in. Mrs. Patel from next door had stayed overnight to watch them, as she often did during my shifts. "Mom!" Jacob jumped up from his cereal, milk dripping down his chin. "You're home early." Emma immediately sensed something was wrong. Did something happen at work? Mrs. Patel looked up from pouring orange juice, her eyebrows raised in question. "There was a problem at the store," I said carefully, setting my purse down. "I had to come home early." "What kind of problem?" Emma asked, watching me closely. I forced a smile. "Just some maintenance issues. Nothing for you to worry about." Mrs. Patel gathered her things, and I walked her to the door, thanking her for staying with the kids. "Is everything all right, Samantha?" she asked quietly. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired. Thank you again for watching them." After she left, I made myself a cup of coffee with shaking hands and sat at the kitchen table, trying to appear normal for my children's sake. Jacob chattered about a dream he'd had while Emma continued to study my face with concern. "Mom, you're acting weird," she finally said. "Did something scary happen?" I looked at my daughter, wondering how much to tell her. Emma had always been intuitive, picking up on things most kids her age missed. "I'm just worried about a coworker," I admitted. "He might be in trouble." "The one who doesn't believe in the rules?" Emma asked. I blinked in surprise. I hadn't realized I'd mentioned Mark's attitude to my children. "Yes, that one." Emma nodded solemnly. "You always say rules keep us safe." "They do," I agreed, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "That's why it's so important to follow them." The morning crawled by. I called Thomas 3 more times, but still got his voicemail. I helped the kids with their homework, made lunch, and tried to act like everything was normal while checking my phone every few minutes. By early afternoon, Jacob was absorbed in a video game while Emma read a book on the couch beside me. At 3:42 p.m., my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered immediately. "Hello? Is this Samantha Wilson?" a male voice asked. "Yes, this is she." "Ms. Wilson, this is Detective Ryan Bennett with the Riverdale Police Department. I understand you work at the Stop and Go convenience store on Maple Street." My throat tightened. "Yes." "I need to ask you some questions about your coworker, Mark Carter. Would it be possible for you to come down to the station this afternoon?" I glanced at Emma, who had looked up from her book. "I have my children with me. Could you tell me what this is about first?" There was a pause on the line. "Ms. Wilson, I'm afraid Mr. Carter's body was found behind the store this morning. Given that you were scheduled to relieve him, we'd like to speak with you." I felt dizzy. I held onto the edge of the couch to steady myself. "His body?" I repeated, my voice barely audible. "Yes, I'm sorry to inform you this way. Would 5 p.m. work for you to come in? We can arrange for someone to watch your children if needed." "No, I have a neighbor who can watch them. I'll be there." After hanging up, I sat motionless, the phone still clutched in my hand. Emma put her book down and moved closer to me. "Mom, What happened? I looked at my daughter, trying to find words that wouldn't frighten her. The co-worker I was worried about. Something bad happened to him. Is he dead? She asked directly. I nodded slowly. Yes, honey, he is. Emma was quiet for a moment. Because he didn't follow the rules? I think so, I whispered. Mrs. Patel agreed to watch the kids again while I went to the police station. Before leaving, I hugged Emma and Jacob tightly, promising to be back soon. Emma hugged me extra hard, as if she understood the danger I faced every night at work. The police station was busy when I arrived. An officer directed me to a small interview room where Detective Bennett waited with a notepad. Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming in, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I understand you discovered the store in an unusual condition this morning. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. Yes. The doors were unlocked when I got there, and Mark wasn't there. There were drops on the floor. Red drops. And you called your manager and left immediately? Yes, that's our protocol if anything seems wrong. Detective Bennett nodded, making a note. Can you tell me about your last interaction with Mark Carter? I explained about the text messages, how Mark had insisted on working alone despite my warnings. And why exactly were you so concerned about him working alone? Bennett asked. It's against store policy. The first rule is never work alone, especially during overnight shifts. Why is that rule so important? I paused, knowing how it would sound. There have been incidents at the store. People who worked alone disappeared or were found dead. Bennett's face stayed neutral, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. What kind of incidents? 2 years ago, an employee named Jason disappeared during a solo overnight shift. Last year, a girl named Rebecca was found dead after failing to lock the doors at 11 p.m. There are specific rules we follow to stay safe. Rules like? I took a deep breath and listed them. Never work alone. No alcohol sales after 2 a.m. Don't investigate bathroom noises between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. When regular customers act strange, they're not themselves anymore. If lights flicker 3 times, go to the back room and wait 7 minutes. At exactly 11 p.m., lock the front doors, no exceptions. As I spoke, Bennett's expression shifted from neutral to incredulous. Ms. Wilson, these sound like superstitions, not safety protocols. They're not superstitions, I insisted. They keep us alive. Did Mark Carter believe in these rules? No. He thought they were ridiculous. He called them horror movie nonsense and superstitious garbage. Bennett made another note. Ms. Wilson, I need to tell you how Mark Carter died. His body was found dismembered behind the store. His limbs and head were separated from his torso. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. I told him not to work alone. Do you know anyone who might have wanted to harm Mr. Carter? I shook my head. No. Mark was new. He'd only been working at the store for about 2 weeks. And these rules you mentioned, their official store policy? Yes. Thomas Jones, our manager, is very strict about them. Bennett wrote something down. We'll be speaking with Mr. Jones as well. In the meantime, I need to ask where you were between midnight and 5 a.m. last night. I was at home with my children. My neighbor, Mrs. Patel, stayed over to watch them while I slept. She can confirm I was home all night. The detective nodded. We'll check that. One more question. The security cameras at the store. Do they record continuously? Yes, Thomas has access to all the footage. Thank you for your time, Ms. Wilson. We'll be in touch if we have more questions. As I stood to leave, Bennett added, I'd advise against discussing the details of Mr. Carter's death with others while this investigation is ongoing. I nodded and left. Mark's death was really getting to me. I had tried to warn him. I had tried so hard. The next morning, Thomas Jones called me at 9 a.m. Sam, I need you to come to the store. The police are reviewing the security footage from Monday night. An hour later, I sat in Thomas's office with Detective Bennett and another officer. Thomas looked grim as he pulled up the footage on his computer. The video showed Mark alone in the store around 10:30 p.m. Monday night. He was reading his magazine at the counter, occasionally checking his phone. At 10:55 p.m., he looked at the clock but made no move toward the doors. 11 p.m. came and went. The doors stayed unlocked. At 11:17 p.m., a hooded person showed up outside the store. Mark looked up as the person came in. They talked, though the video had no sound. Mark seemed relaxed, even smiling as he rang up the person's purchases. At 11:32 p.m., the bathroom door opened on its own. Mark noticed, looking confused. The hooded person pointed toward the bathroom. Mark shook his head, but the person motioned again. A moment later, sounds must have come from the bathroom because Mark turned his head quickly in that direction. The hooded person walked toward the bathroom. After a pause, Mark followed. The video showed both of them going into the bathroom. The door closed behind them. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then the lights started to blink. The camera image distorted, breaking into static before cutting out completely. When the footage started again at 12:17 a.m., the store was empty. The bathroom door was closed. Dark drops led from the bathroom to the back exit. Thomas stopped the playback. Detective Bennett looked worried. "Can you identify the hooded figure?" he asked Thomas. "No, that wasn't William. If that's what you're thinking," Thomas replied. "William never buys anything and he never goes into the bathroom." Bennett turned to me. "Who is William?" "He helps with problems at the store," I explained. "He's tall, wears a black hoodie, but he's protective. He wouldn't hurt Mark." Bennett didn't look convinced. "We'll need to question this William as well." "Good luck with that," Thomas muttered. After the police left, Thomas asked me to stay. He looked older than usual, the lines in his face deeper. "You followed the rules, Sam. You survived. Mark didn't." He sighed heavily. "I've hired someone new. Can you start again tomorrow?" "Someone new? Already?" I asked, surprised by how quickly Mark had been replaced. "The store can't be understaffed, not even for a day." Thomas handed me a file. "Her name is Ashley Peterson, 26, good references. She starts tomorrow night." I took the file, feeling numb. "And what do I tell her about Mark?" "The truth," Thomas said simply. "The rules keep you alive. Breaking them gets you killed." I nodded slowly, thinking of Emma and Jacob waiting at home. I needed this job. The pay was too good to give up, especially as a single mother. But more than that, I understood now that what we did at the stop and go was important. The rules weren't just for our safety. They were for everyone's. "I'll be here," I said, "and I'll make sure Ashley understands the rules better than Mark did." Thomas nodded, looking relieved. "Good. I knew I could count on you, Sam." As I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about Mark's final moments. Had he realized his mistake when it was too late? Had he finally believed in the rules as whatever came through the bathroom door tore him apart? I would never know. All I could do was make sure the next employee understood what was at stake and hope they believed me before it was too late. 2 weeks had passed since I'd found those red drops on the floor of the stop and go. 2 weeks since Detective Bennett had shown me the security footage of Mark following that hooded stranger into the bathroom. 2 weeks since they'd found what was left of him behind the store. I still had nightmares about it. Not about Mark's dismembered body. I hadn't seen that, thank God. But about what might have happened in those missing minutes of footage. What had come through that bathroom door? What had Mark seen in his final moments? Tonight was my third shift training Ashley Peterson. Mark's job had been filled. She stood beside me at the register, carefully counting back change to a customer who just bought cigarettes and a lottery ticket. Her movements were precise, methodical, nothing like Mark's casual disregard. "Have a good night," Ashley said to the customer, who nodded and left. The door chimed as it closed behind him. I looked at the clock, 9:47 p.m. We still had plenty of time before the 11 p.m. lockdown. "You're doing great," I told her. Much better than... I stopped myself. Then Mark. Ashley finished for me. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. It's okay. Thomas told me what happened to him. I nodded, relieved I didn't have to dance around the subject. Did he tell you everything? He said Mark broke the rules, that he worked alone, and... She hesitated, and something got him. That's the short version, I said. The important part is that the rules keep us alive. All of them. Unlike Mark, Ashley had taken the rules seriously from day one. When I'd explained about never working alone, she'd nodded solemnly. When I told her about the 11 p.m. lockdown, she'd asked practical questions about how to do it rather than questioning why. When I'd mentioned the bathroom noises, she'd simply asked what to do if she heard them. It was refreshing. It was also a relief. Let's finish restocking the cooler, I suggested. Then I'll show you how to run the nightly inventory report. We worked side by side, placing energy drinks and sodas in neat rows. Ashley was quiet but attentive, asking questions when needed but otherwise focusing on the task at hand. At 10:30 p.m., we moved to the back office so I could demonstrate the inventory system. I logged into the computer and pulled up the software. This is pretty straightforward, I explained. You enter the counts from your sheets, and the system calculates what we need to order. Ashley leaned over my shoulder, watching as I navigated through the program. What happens if the numbers don't match up? Good question. If there's a discrepancy, you note it here. I pointed to a field on the screen. Thomas reviews all the reports each morning. A loud bang interrupted us. We both jumped, turning toward the office door. What was that? Ashley whispered. I listened. Another bang followed by a rattling sound. It was coming from the front of the store. Stay here, I said, standing up. I'll check it out. I walked cautiously into the main store area. Everything looked normal, until I noticed the bathroom door shaking in its frame. The rattling grew more violent, as if someone, or something, was trying to force its way out. I told Ashley to stay put, but she followed me anyway. She stood frozen a few feet behind me, eyes wide with fear. Is someone in there? She asked, her voice barely audible. I shook my head. No. The bathroom was empty when we checked earlier. I looked at the clock, 10:42 p.m. Remember Rule 5? Never investigate bathroom noises between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. The door rattled harder, the hinges creaking under pressure. A low guttural sound came from inside, not quite human, not quite animal. Ashley took a step back. Shouldn't we do something? Yes, I said, turning away from the bathroom. We keep working. I walked calmly to the register and began organizing the receipt rolls, acting as if nothing unusual was happening. After a moment's hesitation, Ashley joined me, though her hands trembled as she arranged the candy display near the counter. The rattling continued, growing more insistent. The bathroom door bulged slightly, as if something massive was pressing against it. How can you be so calm? Ashley whispered. Practice, I admitted. And knowing that as long as we follow the rules, we'll be okay. The front door chimed, and we both looked up. William walked in wearing a black hoodie. He moved silently toward the coffee station, as he always did. I left the register and prepared his usual cup. Black, no sugar. As I handed it to him, I lowered my voice. We could use some help, I said, nodding toward the bathroom. If you don't mind. William took the coffee, his fingers brushing mine. They felt oddly cool. He nodded once, then turned toward the bathroom. Ashley watched with wide eyes as William walked directly to the rattling door. He placed his free hand flat against the wood, and immediately the rattling stopped. The silence was sudden and complete. William opened the bathroom door and stepped inside, closing it behind him. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened again, and William came out. He placed the cup on the counter as he passed, nodding to me before leaving the store. Ashley stared at the bathroom door, which now hung perfectly still on its hinges. What did he do? I don't know exactly, I said honestly. But William helps with problems. That's what he does. She looked at me, her expression a mixture of fear and awe. Is he human? I hesitated. I don't think so. Not entirely. Ashley nodded slowly, staying pretty calm about it. And the thing in the bathroom? Also not human, I said. And that's all you need to know. We finished our tasks in silence. At 10:55 p.m., I reminded Ashley about the lockdown procedure. She helped me check the store for customers, then stood by as I secured both deadbolts at exactly 11 p.m. Perfect timing, she said, checking her watch. Always, I replied. 3 minutes late is 3 minutes too many. The rest of the night passed without incident. We cleaned, restocked, and ran reports. Ashley asked intelligent questions and followed instructions carefully. By 2 a.m., I was confident she would survive working at the stop and go. Then the front door opened. I looked up, surprised. The doors were locked. No one should have been able to enter. Thomas Jones stood in the entrance with keys. He rarely visited during overnight shifts, preferring to handle store business during daylight hours. "Evening, Sam," he said, nodding to me. "Ashley." He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "I need to speak with you privately," he said. "Ashley, can you watch the front for a few minutes?" Ashley nodded. "Of course, Mr. Jones." Thomas led me to the back office, closing the door behind us. He sat in the chair behind the desk, gesturing for me to take the other seat. "You've done well with Ashley," he said. "She's catching on quickly." "She listens," I replied. "Unlike Mark." Thomas nodded grimly. Mark's death was unfortunate but not unexpected. Some people refuse to believe until it's too late. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "Sam, you've been with us for 3 years now. You followed the rules, trained new employees, and survived. That's more than most can say." "I have kids to go home to," I said simply. "The rules keep me alive for them." "Yes, they do." Thomas leaned forward, his expression serious. "But it's time you understood why the rules exist in the first place." He opened the folder, revealing photographs, diagrams, and what looked like ancient symbols. "The Stop and Go isn't just a convenience store," he said. "It stands on a weak point between dimensions, a thin spot in the fabric of reality." I stared at him, processing his words. Part of me had always suspected something like this, but hearing it stated so plainly was still shocking. "The rules don't just keep you safe. They keep everything on the other side from getting through," Thomas continued. "The 11 p.m. lockdown? That's when the barrier is weakest. The bathroom noises, something trying to create an opening. The customers who aren't themselves anymore. They've been influenced by what lies beyond." I thought about Karen Mitchell with her impossibly bent neck, about the figures that had pressed against the glass doors the night the power went out. "And William?" I asked. Thomas's expression got a bit softer. "William is not human, as you've probably guessed. He's a guardian who decided to help us. There are others like him, but most don't care about our world. William is different." "He protects us," I said. "He protects the boundary," Thomas corrected. "We just happen to be on this side of it." I took a deep breath, trying to absorb everything. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because things are getting worse," Thomas said, his voice low. "The incidents are becoming more frequent. The entities on the other side are growing more aggressive. We need employees who understand what they're really guarding." "Does Ashley know?" Thomas shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. You've earned the right to know." He closed the folder and handed it to me. "Take this home. Study it. The more you understand, the better your chances of survival." I accepted the folder. "Thank you for trusting me with this." "You've proven yourself trustworthy," Thomas said, standing. "Now let's get back out there before Ashley starts wondering what we're discussing." When we returned to the front, Ashley was helping a truck driver find the energy drinks. Thomas nodded to both of us before leaving, the bell chiming as the door closed behind him. "Everything okay?" Ashley asked once the truck driver had left. "Yeah," I said, tucking the folder into my bag. "Just a performance review." The rest of the night passed quietly. At 3:45 a.m., Ashley took her break while I manned the register. At 4 a.m., the bell chimed again as another truck driver entered. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with 3 days' worth of stubble and bloodshot eyes. "Pack of Marlboros and a fifth of vodka," he said, placing a 20 on the counter. Ashley, who had just returned from her break, moved to get the cigarettes while I handled the money. "I'm sorry, sir," I said, "but we can't sell alcohol after 2 a.m., store policy." The man's expression darkened. "It's just a bottle of vodka. No one's gonna know." "I'm sorry," I repeated firmly. "We can sell you the cigarettes, but not the alcohol." "This is bullshit," he growled. "I've been driving all night. I need something to help me relax when I get to the motel." "We have other options," Ashley suggested, pointing to the energy drinks. "Or coffee?" The man slammed his fist on the counter. "I don't want coffee, I want vodka." I stepped slightly in front of Ashley, maintaining a calm expression. "Sir, we simply can't sell alcohol after 2 a.m. It's the law." It wasn't, actually. Not in our state, but it was easier than explaining the real reason. "The law?" he sneered. "You think I care about the law?" As he spoke, something strange happened to his face. The skin around his mouth seemed to stretch, showing too many teeth. His eyes, already bloodshot, started leaking a dark liquid that didn't look like normal tears. "Give me the vodka," he said, his voice distorting, dropping an octave. "Now!" I grabbed Ashley's arm and pulled her back from the counter. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The man, or what was using the man's body, leaned over the counter. His face kept moving in ways that human faces couldn't move. The smell of rot and something chemical was everywhere. "You know what I am," it said, its voice now a guttural growl. "You know what I need." I kept backing up, pulling Ashley with me. "We can't help you. Please leave." The creature snarled, a sound no human throat could make. It reached across the counter, arms stretching impossibly long, fingers elongating into claw-like appendages. "The bottle," it hissed. "Give me the bottle." I remembered Rule 6. If lights flicker 3 times, go to the back room and wait 7 minutes. The lights weren't flickering, but the principle was the same. Retreat to safety. "Ashley," I whispered, "when I say run, go to the back room and lock the door. Wait 7 minutes no matter what you hear." She nodded, her face pale but determined. The creature began climbing over the counter, its movements jerky and wrong, like a puppet with tangled strings. "Run!" I shouted, shoving Ashley toward the back while I moved in the opposite direction, drawing the creature's attention. It turned toward me, mouth opening wider than any human mouth could stretch. I backed away, keeping the shelving aisles between us. "You can't have it," I said firmly. "You don't belong here. Go back." The creature let out a sound between a laugh and a scream. It moved toward me, knocking over displays as it came. I continued backing up, leading it away from the back room where Ashley had run away. For several terrifying minutes, I stayed just out of reach while keeping the creature's attention. Its movements became more erratic, more desperate. The distortion in its face spread until the truck driver's features were barely recognizable beneath the thing wearing his skin. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the creature stopped. It tilted its head at an impossible angle, listening to something I couldn't hear. A look of fear, actual fear, crossed its distorted features. It backed toward the door, eyes darting around the store. Without another word, it turned and ran away, the bell chiming cheerfully as the door closed behind it. I stood frozen for a moment. Then I hurried to the back room, knocking 3 times to let Ashley know it was me. She opened the door, her face still pale but composed. Is it gone? Yes, I said. It left. What was that thing? She asked, her voice steady despite everything she'd just witnessed. Something that doesn't belong in our world, I answered. Something the rules keep out, most of the time. Ashley took a deep breath. I thought Mark was just being difficult when he didn't believe you. I didn't understand how anyone could dismiss what you were saying. She shook her head. But that was... I know, I said gently. It's a lot to take in. She looked me directly in the eyes. I believe everything now, she whispered. Every single rule, every warning, all of it. I nodded, feeling better. Ashley would survive. She understood what was at stake. Good, I said, because believing is what keeps us alive. As dawn approached and our shift neared its end, I thought about the folder Thomas had given me, about the weak point between dimensions, about William and his role as guardian. I thought about my children, Emma and Jacob, sleeping safely at home, unaware of what their mother faced each night at work. And I thought about Mark, who hadn't believed until it was too late. Ashley would be different. She would survive. And so would I. 1 month after learning the truth about the stop and go, I found myself settling into a new routine. Thomas's folder had become a regular part of my life. I'd studied its contents carefully, learning about the thin spots between dimensions, the various entities that tried to break through, and the symbols that helped strengthen the barriers. Knowledge hadn't made the job less dangerous, but it had made the danger easier to understand. Ashley had proven herself a quick study and reliable partner. Unlike Mark, she followed the rules without question, having seen firsthand what happened when they were broken. We'd developed an easy rhythm during our overnight shifts, moving around each other with the practiced efficiency of people who understood exactly what was at stake. Tuesday night started like any other. The store had been busy until about 10 p.m., when the customer traffic slowed to a trickle. Ashley was restocking the candy aisle while I counted the register, preparing for the 11 p.m. lockdown. "How are Emma and Jacob doing?" Ashley asked, arranging chocolate bars in neat rows. "Good," I said, sorting bills into their proper slots. "Emma got an A on her science project. Jacob lost another tooth." "That's great," Ashley said. "Emma's the one who figured out something was wrong with Mark before you did, right?" I nodded, remembering how perceptive my daughter had been. She picks up on things. Sometimes I think she knows more about what happens here than I've told her. The clock read 10:56 p.m. I finished with the register and went to the front doors, looking outside for any last-minute customers. The parking lot was empty except for our 2 cars. "Almost time," I called to Ashley. "Can you check the back aisles?" She nodded and went around the chip display. I pulled out my keys, ready for the lockdown procedure we performed every night. At 10:58 p.m., the lights went out. Not just the store lights, everything went dark. The street lights outside, the neon open sign, even the glow from the refrigerated cases. It was completely dark. I waited for the emergency lights to kick in. They didn't. "Sam?" Ashley's voice came from somewhere in the darkness, tight with fear. "Stay where you are," I called back, pulling out my phone. The screen illuminated, casting a weak blue glow that barely penetrated the darkness. I checked the time. 10:59 p.m. 1 minute until lockdown. I turned on my phone's flashlight and pointed it at the front doors. The light looked weak in the really dark room. "What's happening?" Ashley had made her way back to me, her own phone providing a small circle of light. "I don't know, but we need to lock the doors. Now." A scratching sound came from the bathroom. A familiar noise that always meant trouble. But this time, another scratching joined it, coming from the supply closet on the opposite side of the store. "They're trying to come through in multiple places," I said, moving quickly to the front doors. Ashley's flashlight light moved across the glass doors, then stopped. "Sam," she whispered, "look." outside, barely visible in the darkness, stood figures. Not one or two, but many, their shapes unclear, moving slightly in the dark. They pressed close to the glass, watching us with eyes that reflected our flashlight beams like animals caught in headlights. "Help me," I said, inserting my key into the first deadbolt. The figures outside began to move, pushing against the glass. Hands, or things like hands, were pressed flat against the see-through surface, leaving smears that looked wet in our flashlight beams. Ashley grabbed the second key from her pocket with shaking fingers. I locked the first deadbolt as she inserted her key into the second. My watch beeped, 11 p.m. exactly. Ashley turned her key. The second deadbolt locked with a solid click. The figures outside went still for a moment. Then they all started pounding on the glass at once. The doors shook from the banging. A wailing noise came from outside, not quite human, not quite animal, a sound that made my teeth ache and my skin crawl. "What do we do?" Ashley asked, backing away from the doors. A tall figure appeared beside us, seemingly materializing from the darkness itself. I nearly screamed before recognizing the familiar black hoodie. "William," I breathed, relief washing over me. He nodded once, then pointed toward the back of the store. "Go," he said quietly. "Now." We didn't argue. Ashley and I hurried toward the back room, using our phone flashlights to see. The scratching from the bathroom and supply closet had gotten louder. The doors were bulging a bit in their frames, like something big was pushing against them. William followed behind us, moving quickly and quietly. As we reached the back room, he placed a hand on each door we passed, which somehow made whatever was behind them quiet down for a moment. I pushed open the back room door, expecting darkness. Instead, a warm glow greeted us. Thomas Jones stood inside with several lanterns around him. He looked serious and didn't seem surprised to see us. "Right on time," he said, gesturing for us to enter. William followed us in, closing the door firmly behind him. "What's happening?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady for Ashley's sake. "This is your final test," Thomas said simply. "They're attempting a breach through multiple access points." A tremendous crash came from the store, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Ashley jumped, her eyes wide with fear. "The doors," she began. "William reinforced them before coming to find you," Thomas said. "They'll hold, for now." He went to a metal cabinet I'd never noticed before, opening it with a key from his pocket. Inside were more lanterns, water bottles, and what looked like weapons, but not any kind I knew. Thomas took out 2 of the weird devices and gave one to each of us. "What is this?" Ashley asked, turning the object in her hands. It looked something like a flashlight, but with symbols etched into its surface that matched those in the folder Thomas had given me. "Protection," Thomas said. "Point and press the button if anything gets through. It won't kill them, but it will force them back to their side." Screams echoed through the store, inhuman sounds that made my skin prickle with goosebumps. William stood by the door, head tilted as if listening. "I don't understand," I said. "Why tonight? Why all at once like this?" Thomas looked at me steadily. "Because you're ready now. Both of you. You've proven yourselves capable of following the rules, of believing without seeing. Now you need to see what you're really guarding against." He sat on a folding chair, waving for us to do the same. "You've wondered why this job pays so well," he continued, "why a simple convenience store clerk makes nearly double the going rate. Now you know. You're not clerks, you're guards, protectors, the last line of defense between our world and what lies beyond." Another crash, closer this time. William tensed, his tall form suddenly alert. "They're testing the bathroom door," he said, his voice barely audible. Thomas nodded. "They'll try the supply closet next, then the ceiling tiles. They're getting more creative." "How long will this last?" Ashley asked, clutching her device tightly. "Until dawn," Thomas replied. "The barrier strengthens with sunlight." I thought about Emma and Jacob sleeping safely at home, about Mrs. Patel next door, watching over them, about all the normal people in Riverdale who had no idea what happened at the stop-and-go every night. "If we fail," I said slowly, "if they break through." "They won't stop at the store," Thomas confirmed. "They'll spread, first Riverdale, then beyond." A terrible ripping sound came from outside the room, like fabric tearing on a massive scale. William moved away from the door, positioning himself between us and whatever was coming. "The ceiling," he said. "They're coming through the ceiling." Thomas stood, his expression grim. "This is where you make your choice, Sam. Ashley, you can leave now. William can get you to your cars safely. Or you can stay and fight. But if you leave, don't come back. We'll find someone else." I looked at the device in my hand, then at Ashley. Her face was pale but determined. "I'm staying," she said firmly. I thought about my children again, about the world they lived in, the future they deserved. If these things broke through, what kind of world would Emma and Jacob inherit? "I'm staying too," I said. Thomas nodded, something like pride showing in his eyes. "Good. Remember your training. Remember the rules. They exist for a reason." The ceiling in the main store area gave way with a tremendous crash. Inhuman screams filled the air, along with a smell like rotting meat and burning plastic. "They're through," William said, moving toward the door. Thomas handed each of us a lantern. "Stay together. Aim for their centers. And whatever you do, don't look directly into their eyes." William opened the door, showing the chaos beyond. The store I knew had turned into a battlefield. Shadowy figures moved through the darkness. Their shapes changed and moved as if they couldn't decide what to be. The ceiling was broken open, showing not the night sky, but something else, a weird darkness that hurt my eyes. I raised my device, remembering everything I'd learned from Thomas's folder. These entities couldn't keep their shape in our reality without attaching to something, an object, an animal, a person. If we could stop them from finding anchors, they'd be forced back. For the next several hours, we fought. William was quick and sneaky, stopping the largest entities before they could fully appear. Thomas told us what to do like someone who'd done this many times before. Ashley and I worked together, watching out for each other, using our devices to push back anything that got too close. It was terrifying. It was exhausting. But somehow, we held. As the first gray light of dawn showed through the broken ceiling, the entities began to leave. The tears in reality slowly closed up, the strange darkness fading away. By 6 a.m., it was over. The store was a mess. Broken glass, knocked over shelves, stuff scattered everywhere, but the breach had been stopped. Thomas looked at the damage. "Could have been worse," he said. "Much worse." Ashley sat on the floor, back against the counter, looking shocked but alive. William had disappeared, as he often did once the danger passed. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice hoarse from shouting warnings throughout the night. "Now?" Thomas almost smiled. "Now you go home to your children. Rest. Come back tonight. The store will be ready." "Just like that?" Ashley asked incredulously. "We almost died, and we just come back for another shift?" "That's the job," Thomas said simply. "That's what you signed up for." I helped Ashley to her feet. We were both filthy, covered in a substance I didn't want to identify. But we were alive. "I need to call home," I said. "Check on Emma and Jacob." Thomas nodded. "Use my office. The phones there still work." As Ashley and I made our way to the office, picking through the wreckage of the store, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pride. We had faced the worst the other side could throw at us, and we had survived. We had protected not just ourselves, but everyone. I called Mrs. Patel. She told me the children were fine, still sleeping peacefully. They had no idea what their mother had just been through, what she had just fought, and that was exactly how it should be. As I hung up the phone, I looked at Ashley. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. I think so. It's just a lot to process. It gets easier, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. And it's important. What we do here, it matters. I know, she said. I just never thought I'd be guarding a doorway between worlds when I applied for a convenience store job. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. The benefits are good, though. True, she agreed, a small smile breaking through her exhaustion. We left Thomas's office and found him already directing a cleanup crew that had appeared from nowhere. Men and women in unmarked coveralls were efficiently removing debris, replacing broken fixtures, restoring the store to its normal appearance. Go home, Thomas told us. Be back by 10 p.m. We'll be ready. As we walked to our cars, the morning sun warming our faces, I realized my job had completely changed. I wasn't just a convenience store clerk making good money anymore. I was now someone who protected my world from scary things trying to get in. For Emma and Jacob, I would do it. I would come back night after night following the rules, keeping everything safe. I couldn't even think about what would happen if I didn't. I got into my car and saw Ashley doing the same. We would both come back tonight, ready to work another shift, keeping the dangerous stuff out. This was our choice now. This was our job.